The Prime Minister of Israel used a very big soapbox today to deliver a warning. In a speech to the U.S. Congress, Benjamin Netanyahu was highly critical of President Obama's pursuit of a nuclear deal with Iran. That did not go down well at the White House. Senior Washington correspondent Neil MacDonald has the details. Neil.
Well, I think it's safe to say, Peter, that no foreign leader has ever stood in the well of Congress and gone after an American president the way Benjamin Netanyahu did today. Netanyahu entered Congress in the manner of a president delivering a State of the Union speech, working slowly down the aisle, shaking hands with legislators who'd arrived early to ensure themselves a nationally televised moment embracing Israel's prime minister. He was introduced by Barack Obama's chief political adversary, with whom he arranged this speech directly.
The Prime Minister of Israel, His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu.
And he began with some cursory gratitude to Obama, who was excluded from the arrangements.
We appreciate all that President Obama has done for Israel.
That said, he proceeded to depict Obama as the enabler of evil, specifically the regime in Iran, which he called the single greatest threat on earth. He equated the Ayatollahs with the Nazis.
But Iran's regime is not merely a Jewish problem, any more than the Nazi regime was merely a Jewish problem.
And he said the deal Obama is seeking with Iran to limit its nuclear program will only unleash the greatest danger imaginable.
The foremost sponsor of global terrorism could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons, and this with full international legitimacy.
Netanyahu spoke as though the deal is already in place.
It doesn't block Iran's path to the bomb, it paves Iran's path to the bomb.
Interrupted by several standing ovations, Netanyahu subtly compared himself to Winston Churchill, driving towards a remarkable conclusion, that negotiating with Iran is the modern equivalent of appeasing Adolf Hitler, which Churchill's predecessor famously did. He made the point dramatically, directly addressing Elie Wiesel, the most famous of all Holocaust survivors, who was seated beside Netanyahu's wife in the audience.
I wish I could promise you, Elie, that the lessons of history have been learned. I can only urge the leaders of the world not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Not to sacrifice the future for the present, not to ignore aggression in the hopes of gaining an illusory peace.
Congressional Democrats called the speech condescending and inappropriate. President Obama pointed out that there is no deal yet and said there won't be one unless Iran agrees to verifiable conditions. Furthermore, he said,
the Prime Minister didn't offer any viable alternatives.
What Netanyahu actually accomplished today, beyond insulting the president and exciting Republicans, is dubious, Peter. The talks with Iran continue. China, Russia, America, and European nations are participating. The goal is to ensure that Iran remains at least a year away from developing a nuclear weapon for at least a decade. And the deadline for a deal is just 3 weeks away.
Well, of course, Netanyahu is facing an election in Israel in 2 weeks. But what about alternatives to a deal? Surely he's got something in mind.
Well, more sanctions, although sanctions certainly haven't thwarted Iran's nuclear program so far. And of course, a military strike if necessary. Now, Israel has threatened that in the past, and Netanyahu hinted at it again today. But really, Peter, that decision would be the president's. And the president says it probably wouldn't work.
All right, Neil, thank you. Senior Washington correspondent Neil MacDonald.